Good evening!
Good evening, everybody. It's so lovely to be here. Pardon? I have no idea. Michael's complaining about the volume.
Oh, my
Yes.
volume, your volume, the
No, I
volume
think
fine.
it's the volume in general that he was complaining about.
Oh.
Yes, he was complaining. But hello, Miles, Suzanne, Trace, Angela. Somebody called Nick Brown. Don't know who that is.
Yeah, I don't trust
Julie.
him.
Father. Hello, Dad.
Uh, Hello, Mr. D.
Sending you tons of healing as always.
Julie
Um,
and Evelyn and Samantha.
Hello,
They're
Samantha.
no doubt there with Hannah and Henry, of course.
Yes, I would have thought, bless them. Um, Evelyn and Nicola. Evelyn,
Hey.
your telly is in such travesty.
Oh, we need to
Oh,
know more. We need to know
yes.
more.
What's happening with Evelyn's
Telly.
TV?
Yes, we're
If it's anything
curious
like the
about that
telly
one.
we've had recently, of course it's yeah, comedy of errors, but there we are.
I say nothing yet. Yet, I will put that condition in.
Yes,
Hello
yes.
to Leslie and hello to Jay. How are we all?
I hope. Yeah, we were just getting round
Yeah,
to that, Suzanne. Um, we of course have to include in our prayers the family of Robbie Coltrane, and of course as well the indomitable Angela Lansbury, who
absolutely.
passed away yesterday. Yesterday.
I think so.
It,
Yes,
it's just it's awful. We pray for them for a safe transition, and we pray for their families as well. Um,
absolutely.
Nick, would you like to open our little meeting in prayer?
Well, absolutely yes, and of course do continue to send your healing thoughts, everyone, to of course Reverend Tony and Michael,
Thank you.
who are in fine voice but still in need of upliftment. I'm sure. Um, we've all heard of the thin blue line. They've got the think pink line.
Yes.
There's probably a joke somewhere in there, but I'm doing prayers at the moment, so no jokes. So let's all just join together. You can tell what it's going to be like tonight with us put back together, don't you? Let's join together, friends, as we say, Great Spirit, Father, Mother, God, we thank you for the opportunity and the ability to unite here as friends, as loved ones, as family, as kin, as brother and sister in this life, in this world, and in this service that we provide. We also send healing to the animal kingdom, who are reminding me that they wish to be part of these prayers, of course. And we ask for your healing light to shine on all those who are in need and all those who require it. Whether there is anyone to ask for them or not, we ask for them right now. And as we place this evening, this work, your words and your deeds in your care and keeping, we make the statement as ever that everything we do will be in the name of love, truth, and light. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And I do apologise for Horace wanting to join in.
I think it's wonderful, actually. I think it's quite right that he should join in, because I would have forgotten to mention the animal kingdom without Horace reminding me. You
There we
know.
are. You see. You see. Um, I wanted to set up a live for tonight because it's been such a long time since I've been on, and a long time since we've been on together.
Absolutely.
Um, I do want to pick up on the address you gave yesterday, which I thought was superb. It was uplifting as always, and the fact that there was a Nick Brown delivering petrol to a Nick Brown who managed to be
Yeah.
the petrol station who shall remain nameless
Absolutely.
was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And oh, Lisa, your life's a bit of a mess. You need guidance,
Oh,
please.
bless you.
We shall see what the spirit world brings
Yes,
forward
let's see.
tonight.
Because one of the things that I find about our speakings and our chats, that even though people don't always perceive these philosophical debates as mediumship, they absolutely are. They're guided by spirit at the end of the day. And it is a message that everyone can take something from. You know, and even, you know, the irony of what I said last night. You know, there is that old saying of life is stranger than fiction, and sometimes you really can't make it up. But the point is, I didn't. It's absolutely true. The other Nick Brown was watching last night. The petrol delivery man, that is. The other Nick Brown, the other Reverend Nick Brown, probably wasn't. Although I'm sure he probably does notice me when he Googles himself, because we kind of like share the top of the first page in Google, which is quite ironic, really. But all joking aside, you know, it's an important message, and I think, you know, one that we tend to forget, that the philosophy is a message all of its own, and can have that life-changing impact sometimes. That a hello, how are you? I died of this, and you've got an anniversary on that. Might not necessarily have. It will have an impact. Thanks, Mother. I thought one Nick Brown was enough. Well, you said it. In fact, in the words of Dr. Stephen Franklin, you did it. But there you go. But no, in all seriousness, you know, whilst the life-changing experience of mental mediumship and communication of our loved ones has the impact of helping us realise that we go on, with the greatest of respect, what's the point of going on if we don't continue to learn, to develop, to grow, but most importantly to share those learnings, to share those experiences? And that for me is what philosophy does.
Yeah.
And it can have that most insightful impact. But we'll get to that, I'm sure, when you pick up on the points that you want to pick up on about last night.
It was just to echo what you were saying, actually, that it's philosophy is that teaching from spirit that in Orthodox Church you would get in a lesson or a sermon or something.
Sermons, homilies, yeah.
Yeah, it's all of that. But what I thought was interesting last night was something, it echoed with me some philosophy that I'd done a few weeks ago at a church in Staveley in Chesterfield, about no matter what you are going through in life, spirit are there and will do what they can to help. And that could be that it could be that they put somebody in your path, or like Nick Brown meeting Nick Brown, you know, the chances of that are,
Yeah.
you know. So for me, that was spirit just saying to you, there you go, put that in your pipe and smoke it, mate.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
That for me was the teachings that I needed to give that night in Staveley. And somebody came to me afterwards and said, I so needed to hear that because I felt so alone.
Yeah.
And just yesterday, somebody knocked on my door and said, oh, is this such and such a street? No, it's south or north or whatever, the opposite of what you're looking for. And they struck up a conversation about, oh, my sat nav, you know, and I'm sure I put South Road in and it's North Road that I've come to, and da. And an hour and a half later, they parted ways.
Yeah.
And it was just that spark that they needed to snap them out of that dark place they were in. And that is the teachings of spirit. And you know, she said, I just couldn't understand why this guy knocked on my door out of the blue, and then tonight you said spirit will always put somebody in your path. And she says, I knew as soon as you said it was my mother. My mother sent that person round to my house, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And your addresses always do that for me. Your addresses always spark that for me, and you think, right, yeah, you know. And even if I haven't got time to watch the whole of your service, I'll always make sure I catch that first half hour. Because even if it's the day after, not that I'm watching EastEnders, as you always say.
Of course.
Because you've got other stuff going on in your life. But I always try and catch up just that last. Because as a medium, you think, well, yeah, I like to watch other mediums work, but I know spirit are there. But I just need to catch that first bit. Because it's
absolutely, and you know it's absolutely true. I've always, as you well know, because I could gas off for England, I've always had this absolute passion for the philosophy because it serves more people in one go. And you know, I don't like, if truth be told, I don't like talking about myself. You know. It might seem quite strange for people who've gotten used to me over the last few years, especially when I come on and gas bag with yourself. You know, there's this view of, you know, Nick's really confident and Nick will, you know, keep talking and talking and talking. I don't know where they get that from, of course, you know. But the point is, I really don't like talking about myself. But if something that I've experienced can be of use, then I'll allow spirit to make use of that memory and why they've brought it up. But it must have a purpose and must have a meaning that isn't slapdash or just bolted on so that it's a sake of just talking about me. You know, because even in this way of life, we've got so many people that will just share a story about themselves that's so war-striking and amazing and wonderful, but where is the actual spirit contact? Where is the spirit purpose behind sharing that story? I could talk about myself for days and days and days, but the point is, if it's not going to serve a purpose, if it's not got meaning, and if it's not going to help someone, nobody wants to hear it. You know,
no,
I could tell stories about how I met people in shops, and you know, I met lots of people in shops, because usually it was about 450 a day, but it doesn't prove anything unless there was some kind of spirit input, spirit contact, or moral. And I think, you know, people do joke about, oh, Nick's going off on a sermon again. And I don't mind that, because it gives me the opportunity to say, well, actually, it's not a sermon, it's a homily. Because a sermon is, as you would know, and many people, I'm sure, would know watching, but as a reminder, you know, a sermon is talking about scripture and explaining that scripture. Oh, bless you, Mum. You would say that. A homily is a discussion of life, about a specific theme, that may be of help, and it's what we spiritualists call the address. And you know, it must have meaning, it must have cause. I mean, yes, sometimes you can work with spirit to make up a story, so long as you say that you're making up that story, because that then becomes a parable, a simile, an example, a way of understanding things a little bit better, in a much simpler story. I told a parable last night after church to a good friend of mine who was in need of help and support, and I told her I've just made all that up, but the meaning I haven't. And that's the important thing, because spirit will give you what you need, and sometimes it actually isn't that so and so stood behind you and has been, you know, running the finger through the dust because you haven't cleaned in a while, and it's lovely and it's great and I love it and I always will. But I think that whereas mediumship and the messages of friends and relatives in spirit give us purpose, philosophy then gives that purpose meaning.
Yes. I smirk because a lot of that rings true, and I always say spirit are really good at giving you what you need.
Yeah.
How many times have you been doing sittings with people and say, oh, but I wanted to know this and I wanted to know, yeah, but what you want isn't what you're going to get from spirit. What you get from spirit is what you need right now.
Yeah.
What you want, I want to be a millionaire.
Ain't never gonna happen. Unless
Yep.
unless your 1 in 14 million comes up, but that would...
Exactly. But it's that thing about the trust in spirit as well that I think is important, and it's the trust in spirit that for me was the hardest lesson to learn, because I mean it's something I've said 1,000,001 times, and anybody who's seen me out and about probably has heard me say this. As a singer, Kylie Minogue goes out on stage, she's got a set list down, she's got her dance routines down, she's got all of her cues down. Actors the same, they've got their cues down, they know the script, they know the stage directions that they've got. We get up on a rostrum, nothing other than an opening prayer, if we say the same prayer all of the time. Mine always slightly changes, but
Completely.
Nothing. And that was the hardest thing, because I got inside my own head every time I was going out with Jean and going up on rostrum. I was, but what if I stand there and I'm blank, and what if I stand there and that was the hardest thing for me to learn, was to reach to spirit and to say, I know you're here, let's go.
Absolutely.
And going back to what we said about spirit always putting somebody in your path and this, that and the other, on the flip side of that, for anybody who's sat out there and is thinking, but I've met these people and I can't see what they're bringing to the table, well, maybe you've been put in their path.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's you that is teaching something to these people, or you that has something that these people need. But on the flip side of that, it's always a two-way street.
Completely.
And if you look for it, the meaning will be there.
Absolutely. And I'm just going back to Lisa, who's updated us with a little more. It's easy for people like us to share thoughts and reasons as to why. But as well as having faith in spirit, there's an important lesson about faith in something else that even we sometimes forget, and that's faith in ourselves. And as much as you are, Lisa, really going through it right now, and I can see that from your comments, what I will say is, speaking in my personal life at the moment, I have someone close to me who's going through exactly the same thing that you are going through right now. The only difference is that the conversation about property is on Tuesday, not Monday, and that is the truth. The point is, you are still standing tall. You are still fighting. You are still going. You are still doing the right thing and asking for guidance, for help. But just think about what you are learning right now, and having seen you commented in, I remember names on these things, having seen your comments in the past and the kind of person you are, Lisa, I know that you will make use of your experiences to help others. Mm-hmm. And those lives will help others, and those lives will help others. It always reminds me of that conversation, and I always have to bring it back to a sci-fi reference, because that's something that I've got a lot of information in my head about. And the final episode of Quantum Leap, where Sam is deciding whether or not to continue, and he's talking to Al the barman, who is allegedly purported to be God, deciding whether he's going to carry on leaping or not. And Sam says, well, I didn't help that many people. And he said, But you've got to remember that the lives you've touched others, and those lives others. If you help one person and they go out and make a difference and use what you've given them to share that, it's this ripple and echo effect, and before you know it, and chances are you never will, that one person that you decided to give support or guidance or advice to has ended up spreading it and sharing it and sharing it and sharing it. You've ended up helping probably 10,000 people in the space of a year, and you'll never know it, and you didn't do it for that reason. You did it because you're a nice person. So although you are struggling, I know that you have the strength within you because you are still here and you are still fighting, and we are all sending our thoughts. We are all here to, if anybody is online who's been through it before, that can start that love ball. A new phrase, a love ball, is start that ball of love rolling, who can offer some advice to Lisa. Then it starts that process, and it gives you that support that you need and that strength to know that, as well as having trust in spirit, you must have trust in yourself, and you will be fine. And we will all certainly be sending our thoughts and prayers on Monday. So
yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
And the irony is, I'll just throw this one quickly in before Tony gets chance, because we always are on a similar wavelength, so we'll end up saying the same things. So it's a race to get in first. Tony obviously mentioned a few moments ago about how, we walk up onto the platform with no preparation and no readiness, and we had the opportunity to do that preparation, and I will do a screenshot if nobody believes me. Tony sent me a message about half an hour before the service and said, any particular topics you want to touch on tonight? And I said, well, apart from the fact that we need to mention Mrs. Potts and Hagrid, no, because I'm sure the conversation will inspire itself. And that's a faith in spirit, but also it's a faith in you lovely people watching, being a part of the process and leading us down the path that we need to go for you. And that's the most important thing, for me anyway.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's got to... I've always said that this online space, this online church, is the church of the names that go up in the comments, not my church. Not
here.
Michael's church, Jean's church, Irene's church, even yours, Nick. It belongs to the people who tune in, who comment, who drive it. And for me, when it stops being about that and it starts being about, oh, look, I've got this online church that attracts... No, that's time to pack it in. And I know for a fact, the first time that happens, Spirit will take that away.
Oh, yes.
Just like that, because no, you're getting too big for your boots, boy.
Yeah, reel it in, love. A church is not bricks and mortar, and we are members of it. We can take the same ownership that everyone else can. It's our church. So sometimes I'll say my church, but I'm saying the Royal My, because I serve that church. All the other members of that church don't serve it unless they want to. My job is to serve that church. So, if a church was bricks and mortar, then it would be an empty, cold shell. A church is warm and loving because of the people that are within it.
Exactly.
And not only will Spirit whip it away from us, especially in this day and age, people would vote with their feet and say, you know what, I'm not quite happy with your attitude, bye-bye. And you know what, they'd be absolutely well within the right to. Because we are all about service. Service is not leadership. Service is guidance and support, yes, maybe. But it's about being there for people who are in need. And that is not the need of ego, and that is not the need of... being right all the time or being clever. And when you see that, that's the time to as one of my relatives would say, is turn tail, hitch up your skirt, and sod off, because you need to get out of there. And you know, I'll always continue to speak plainly because that's who I am. But you know, it reaches.
It's like if I'm talking to somebody, I'll talk about my congregation. That is just a phrase. It's not,
because you are a part of it.
Yeah, we are all part of the congregation, and when I watch Little Port's services on a Thursday evening, I am part of Little Port's congregation, even though
Absolutely.
It's virtual. I'm there.
You're still there, yeah.
That's the thing for me, that I've talked to so many people who wear these, who miss the point completely about what it is that we do.
Yeah.
We are there to serve the needs of the person in front of us in the best way we can. We're not perfect. We'll not get it right 100% of the time, but we'll do our best. And we'll do our best for each and every one of the people who wish to engage with us. And this is, for me, it's not a badge of honor, and it's not a symbol. It's getting ordained for me was never about wearing this. It was about accepting the path that God had put in front of me to serve, and it's just a thing of, I think I've told you before, Nick, I'd done an online service at our caravan. We took her back to her caravan and took the dogs with me, because I thought, well, it'll give them the last walk. I can take them down Hornsey Seafront, and I had left my shirt on, and I just pulled the fleece over, and this guy came up to me and started talking to me, and opened up about some issues he was having, and the fact that he had a very addictive personality, and he wished he could do something about it. And I said, but you've approached me and you've told me about it, so you've acknowledged that there's that I've seen it. You've acknowledged that you have this problem, and you know, it's the first step. Now you just need to find somebody you can confide in, who knows you, who can help you and direct you to the best possible help in the area, because I don't know this area that well. And it's just that sign of, I'm friendly, you can talk to me. That's all it is. And it gives people permission to approach and speak to you.
Absolutely, yes. In actual fact, I'm reminded, I often describe it as it's my taxi in service light, you know. And I've experienced so many wonderful conversations that have been beneficial to others, just by wearing it. And it's like you said, sometimes you forget. I'm terrible. I mean, I spend more time in this than I do anything else these days, since I retired or evicted myself from retail. And I'd taken Mum over to hospital. And for some, I think I'd got a service or something afterwards, and I was just saving time, so I threw it all on as I do. And I'd got my hoodie on as well, and I'd got my because Mum was in having a scan and I wasn't allowed in, so I'd got my earphones in, listening to Tomboy's "Okay to Be Gay" and boogieing along the street, and you know, glancing over my shoulder any time something interesting appeared on the road. There was a lot of builders about that day. I'm all I'm saying. And suddenly, this hand came on my shoulder. And I'd completely forgotten, especially with, you know, the music and the sun, and, you know. And this lady just turned around and said, "Excuse me, Father, my husband's over there with a problem with his liver, and he asked if I could come and get you to come and pray with him." Now, there would be some that would say I should have corrected her. My title isn't Father, I'm not Catholic. You know, obviously calling me Father, especially, you know, with the accent that she had, it was obvious that she was Catholic by the way she approached me and spoke to me. But did she need to know? did she really care? She was reaching out for help.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there and able to provide that help. And, you know, I gave a very open, non-denominational, very level prayer with him, and even went that stage further and said, would you like me to send you some healing? And he said, yes, please. So I placed my hand on his shoulder, and, you know, and it didn't matter in that moment that I was the spiritualist minister and that she was a Catholic congregant. She was somebody who needed help, and I was there, and I had a duty by nature of putting this on to provide that service. Absolutely. Prayer is prayer. It is a request for help, and she asked for help, and I was able to help facilitate that. And that's the important phrase there, to facilitate it, because, you know, even going back to what you were saying about the people forgetting what this position means, to me, my job is not even to tell people what God is.
No.
Because it isn't. We all have a personal relationship with the Great Spirit. My job is to help point people in a direction that might help them find that particular relationship. But I can't tell you what your relationship with God is based on mine. And absolutely, you know, Michael, you're right. The colour is part of a uniform that identifies the role I fulfil. And, you know, for me to even say I can tell you what God is would be wrong, because it's a personal relationship. I wouldn't claim to turn round to you, Tony, and say, if you're having, you know, problems with Michael because he's making witty comments in internet, the way I deal with mine is by doing this, because everyone's different. It would not work. So just as that is a personal relationship that I'd have no right to tell you how to run it, I've got no right to tell people how to run their conversation with God. So my job is to help people find that relationship and that understanding.
To enable that relationship with God and Christ in the way that they do. I always refer back to the Church of England church that I used to go to up in County Durham, and Reverend Allen was not our Reverend Allen, it's a different Reverend Allen, would always say at communion, if you are in a good relationship with your God, come and take of the table.
Yeah.
Now, that for me was like mind blown, because it was like, yeah, I have a good relationship with my God.
Yeah.
And here we go again. I'm off on one. That was the hardest thing for me when I came out and came to live here with Michael, and it was those years and years and years of, oh, that's wrong, you know, man shalt not lie with man, da 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 da. And it just struck me one day that, hang on, all those years I sat in church and prayed about it, and this isn't right, and I'm married, and this doesn't feel right, and God knew what was in my heart. And God still, every time I walked into that church, I felt like I'd been given the biggest hug ever by God. So, you know, your relationship with God is your business. Yeah. Nobody has the right to judge you on anything other than you and God.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you are in a good relationship with Christ and with God, ours is not to judge and reason why.
Exactly.
We can say as ministers, have you thought about, have you considered, maybe try reading this chapter and that chapter of the Bible and da 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 da, but it's how about those chapters speak to you. I'm not telling you that what those words mean is X, Y, and Z, because I've read chapters of the Bible and then read other people's narratives on them and thought, oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get that at all.
Yeah.
What was you there?
Interestingly enough, you're absolutely right. I've been getting back into TikTok,
Oh,
and I did a little 15-second video of my parable of the deep-rooted tree. I don't know whether I've ever told you that one. I finally have other foreign language words to use to describe tree now, because I did some research into it. But there's a friend of mine on TikTok called Mama Bug. She's a lovely lady,
yeah.
and we've chatted numerous times. I finally stayed up until 1 in the morning to go and chat with her on one of her lives about a week ago. And she's bless her in need of healing, so everyone please send. But she challenges people's views when they are oppressive and conservative and forceful. Information, advice, guidance, not instruction. Absolutely. So when somebody throws a clobber passage for any type of lifestyle at me, I will explain my view of why that clobber passage is there, why I feel that they may be in error, but it always comes back to unconditional love has no conditions. And so long as what is being said to you is demonstrating unconditional love, then I believe that it is part of the Great Spirit's plan. As soon as it jumps away from unconditional love, then I have a problem, and I will kind of get on my soapbox. Oh,
Bye, Dad.
bye, Mr. D. Bye, Mr. D. And bye, Julie, as
Bye,
well. You've got
Julie.
to dash off. Be safe. But the whole point is, I will not say to those people, "Oh, bless you." That's very kind. I just do as I'm told. I could sit and yak here all day because they just. I'm like a drain pipe, really. They feed it into me, and I just spout it out. Then now there's an image. But I like to keep it light. I like to keep it informal. I like to keep it normal. But the point is, I will get on my soapbox, but I will always add that condition that this is my view, this is how I perceive it. I mean, for example, one of the clobber passages that I saw today, in actual fact, was somebody talking about that in a marriage, a woman must submit to her husband's desires. And of course, people use 1 Corinthians 7 verses 3 to 5 to underpin that, because it does in fact say that a wife's body does not belong to her, it belongs to her husband. But what they forget to mention, and this is the thing, if you read before and after, it also says that the husband's body does not belong to him, it belongs to her. So what it was doing is, because it was a very patriarchal society and it was all very male orientated in those days, what he was trying to do was actually say, actually, you're both entitled. And if they want to get really, really heavy-handed with that, I'll just throw Colossians at them, where it says, husband, be good to your wife and loving to your wife. So the point is, he was trying to redress and rebalance that unity and that equality, and that a man and a woman in a relationship are a unit and have equal say and equal authority. But if one says no, no means blooming no. So I will get on my high horse when I see travesties that are blatantly about control, but control is once again veering away from unconditional love. So I will jump up and down on that one, but that's beside the point. My job is to protect, to give guidance and support, but that protection I do take quite seriously. And if people try to use the Great Spirit's name to underpin and lay foundation to their authoritarian bigotry, then I do believe we have a responsibility to stand up and
Oh,
make our voices heard. But it
absolutely.
doesn't mean to say that that's because I'm a minister that that's my job. It's everyone's job
Yes.
to stand up and speak against bigotry, against hatred, against,
Yeah.
and if people want to make use of something that I said 6 months ago that I can't even remember unless I have a look on Facebook or YouTube, to actually back that up, then go for it. I
Yeah,
don't own my words. Spirit own my
absolutely.
words.
Absolutely. Which is why we felt duty bound to go when that American preacher was coming to the arena in Sheffield to spout his hate. So we went with our little flags and rainbows and
Yeah.
pointed out the error of his ways.
Yes. And you
Um,
see, you can point a direction. It's up to people whether they walk it or not.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly. We were there to give out information just as he was there to give out his information. Um, and yeah, all in all, it was very peaceful, and it's good. But
yeah.
yes, absolutely. Nowhere in the Bible, and I did a 3-year course, did I ever see anything that where God espouses hate. It just
Absolutely.
it wasn't there, And like I
Absolutely.
said, God, and as I said earlier, God, in your heart if God is judging or if God's saying to you, that's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. That's not a good thing. You know that. You don't need us or anybody to say you're wrong. That's not our job. That's between you and God. And you. Sorry, I'm a bit distracted. Michael was waving his hands about in front of the light
In
and making
gesticulation.
shadow puppets. I think it was. Um,
Um,
my fathers would say your mate is not a.
helpmate, they are a
I haven't
help
quite got
meet.
that. I don't think
Not a
I've got that.
helpmate, a help meet, as in
Oh yes,
meeting, I
yes,
believe. Yeah. Yeah.
yes. And that's another thing I found with this way of life. It it's made me very good at keeping those people near me who are nurturing, who are giving positive energy, who are helping my path and helping me move forward with things, but also to keep within my circle the people who aren't, but to not feed off their negative energy.
Yeah.
I've got no time in my life for negativity and negative energy anymore.
Quite right.
And I've found that all, no, not all, 98% of all of the spiritualist churches I've been in, no matter what denomination of spiritualism they come from, have been filled with people who shine their light for others.
Yeah.
There are the odd one where I think, oh, that's not, no, no. And the ones that have been the problem, it's not been the congregation, it's been the committee.
Yeah.
Because they talk about their church and we need to stop that because it's not helping our church. Hang on. No, it's the congregation's church here. You are custodians of it on behalf of the congregation. Now,
Absolutely.
but it is about finding how you can serve God and serve Spirit, and how you can build your relationship with God and with Spirit for me. And everybody who comes onto my services, Nick's services, who attend spiritualist churches, you are treading that path. You
Yeah.
are treading that path. and it's amazing.
Yeah,
It is
and you know, one of the things that I find brings people to us, talking about, you know, all that we've talked about has led me to a thought that I've been pondering on for the last couple of days. Interestingly, one of the things that brings people to these kinds of groups, these kinds of meetings, these kinds of conversations, is loneliness. Yeah, I know a lot of people who would say the same thing, and
Look
it's
in
a
your area
shame.
and see if there's another church.
Yeah,
Please,
gonna
look
say,
in your area.
and if not, open one. We'll give you direction and guidance if you
Yeah,
need it.
of
You know,
course.
gonna say, one thing that I've always said about doing stuff is that I've learned a lot from the people that I didn't get on with, because everything that I disagreed with, I don't do. And you know, it seems to work for the most part. But you know, the thing for me is loneliness.
Mm.
And one of the things that Scripture massively understates is the first loneliness. And in actual fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 words describes the first and biggest loneliness. And this is why I always say that the Great Spirit understands us more than we can know. 9 words in Scripture explains God's loneliness. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. How understated is that? He spent the first, or it spent the first half of eternity on its own, with no one to converse with, no one to share with, no physicality to explore. It was just an endless void of nothingness. I am the only presence here. I am the only physicality here. I am the only thing here. I'm on my own. I need somebody around. So, boom, suddenly the world of the physical comes into being and time starts to run a bit differently. And then it started breaking piece of itself off, and they formed angels, but they were too close to him and too close to it, or too similar in its understanding and feeling to be able to ease that loneliness, because it was just like looking into a hall of mirrors. So it looked down and saw that all this works that had been going on about the development of the earth and the universe and all the stars and all the atoms and all the molecules all forming and shaping and dividing, and thought, oh, look at them things down there. They're kind of like interacting with each other, those animals. What if I were to break off a piece of myself and throw it in that? And so, although we forget that we were part of that greater image, that greater picture, you said about continuing from last night, here comes the jigsaw puzzle again. Although we had no understanding or memory of being part of that great presence, what we experience helps that entity to understand itself and explore the various aspects of itself. But it was all, the whole universe was born out of a being who, yes, absolutely, with no gender, was lonely and needed company and needed something to occupy its mind with. And, you know, keeping an eye on us is part of that. But learning about us and from us is as much part of that cycle. So if anyone thinks that this great and majestic described being doesn't understand loneliness, if it weren't for that fact that it was lonely, we wouldn't be here, I believe, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, God has no gender. God is energy. God is pure love. Okay, Lisa. Good night. Love and light to you as well. And
We'll be thinking of you on Monday.
Yes, definitely. A lady called Linda Brown has said, "Little poor family have given me life." I have always someone who will listen to me. They are a lovely group, really helped me through these last few weeks, plus Nick, of course.
Well, he's
But
there anyway.
that's the thing, isn't it? That a church is a community.
Yes.
And even what I absolutely loved about this online community is the conversations that I know people have outside of the bubble of the service. So
Yeah.
people are now communicating outside of there from different parts of the world, which is
Yeah.
amazing, absolutely amazing.
We'd have never have met Matthew Stapley if it weren't for the pandemic.
No, exactly. And what a lovely, truly spiritual guy he is as well.
And I believe Evelyn's over in America as well.
Yeah.
I think it might begin with an A or something like that. I can't remember, but I remember Evelyn because we've got the same surname, you see. So I remember things like that. But I've bumped into people online who lived 5 miles down the road and didn't know we were there.
Mm.
That have started coming, and I've spoken to people all just as you have, and all of these lovely people have. And what I actually find is really, really brilliant is that the conversation is Arizona. Thank you, Evelyn. I knew there was an A there, but that was memory, not spirit. Because if it was spirit, they'd have told me Arizona. And there you go. But the thing is, the conversation continues and deepens in the chat box, even while we're speaking, and the support that each other give to each other. And it's absolutely brilliant, and it's wonderful. And it is, as you said, community. That to commune together, to unite together, to build a community is an amazing thing, and everyone has a part of it. I'm reminded that Robert Owen, who was one of the spirit entities attributed to coming up with the 7 principles of spiritualism, who was the founder of the cooperative movement. In the United Kingdom.
Oh, okay.
It's not actually true. There's a bit of a story behind that. If we get time, remind me. I'll talk about that one. But Robert Owen was building these co-op movements, so building communities that kind of were self-sustaining communes. Worked an awful lot with Quaker communities to help build. And he actually had one in Mainey, which is about 15 miles away from where I live in Littleport. My aunt Val actually lives there. And this Robert Owen guy, he was all about giving people the resources, the skills, and the ability to support each other and come together in common cause and intent. And I see very much these services that we set up, that we are invited to be a part of. The lovely Reverend Ashley Oliver down south who gave us, I mean, to put it bluntly, all of our services are pretty much a bastardization of each other's ideas. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
We nick off each other, we borrow off each other, we adapt, we make use of, and they all amalgamate into this wonderful and loving community for people to feel comfortable in. But that similarity also means that people know what within reason to expect, that frequent these various different circles that we are in. So they all come together and unite and say, oh yes, I saw that in Tony's video, oh yes, I saw that in Ashley's video, oh yes, I saw that in Nick's video. And because we all kind of like listen and learn from each other, rather than saying, well, I did that, you can't do that, it gives people a commonality that gives comfort and support and joy. Should I be reading this before I get to the last line?
Yeah.
Why is that bloke wearing this long pause? Yeah, you mean, yeah. And this is the thing. All these various different... there's only one organisation that is an existing religious organisation that I know welcomes in spiritualist churches to make use of their premises and their halls. It's the Quakers. You know, I've demonstrated in Quaker halls because they rent out their room to spiritualist churches. You don't get it in many other religions that they would allow us to make use of their halls. And unfortunately, I don't hear of many spiritualist churches doing the same in kind.
No.
So this is where we have to be careful, because we are not the sweet and innocent, all-loving organisation that we should be.
No.
Because humans get involved.
Yeah. Not many spiritualist churches, correct me if I'm wrong, opened up during all the lockdowns to provide hot teas and coffees and things for people. I know some did, but a lot of Orthodox churches did, and a lot of Salvation Army churches and things did as well.
Yeah.
But, so we do have to hold our hands up and say we're not perfect.
Absolutely.
We're not perfect.
I mean, the irony is the advice and guidance on how to advance spiritualism came in a document that we never ever found out about for years, and that was the Archbishop of Canterbury's commission and investigation into spiritualism back in the early 1900s. And we love you too, Evelyn, and we're always glad you're here. I always get excited when I see your name, because, you know, we're kin from afar, both in spirit and in name. But, you know, the thing for me is, it's said that spiritualism could be an absolute powerful force for good if it were to do certain things. But because those thoughts and opinions came from a Church of England establishment, they were poo-pooed, when in actual fact most of it was just common sense and really good ideas to follow. And I do try and pick up on some of them from time to time in what I do. Because, you know, it was common sense, and it doesn't matter whether you agree with an organisation or not. If they say something that's right, it's right. There is, you know, it's cold hard numbers. 1 + 1 does really equal 2, unless you're dealing with quantum physics, and none of us are. We are we might be quantum physics made manifest. You know, but even quantum physics gets it wrong sometimes, because I saw a report today that there was a black hole that ejected something rather than drew it in. I will.
Interesting.
I'm going to have to do some more digging into that, because I love that side of it as well. For those that do not know, a black hole, or singularity, is a super dense mass of gravity of which nothing can escape, including light. However, and I do need to verify this, so this is only opinions and thoughts that I've read on articles so far, haven't gone into the depth that I normally do. But it is said in quantum physics that nothing can escape a black hole, not even light. However, they were watching this black hole in a galaxy far, far away, and it sucked in this star about 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was. And in the last year or so, there's been nothing gone in since that star, but they've seen matter being ejected from that black hole.
Ooh.
So, you know, when people say it's science, so it's got to be, the point of science is that it is a journey of discovery. Science should never say absolutely no or absolutely yes. Science should say, let's find out if we can. And just because we can't prove or disprove something doesn't mean to say that science is right at that particular time. It's right for the time and at that level of knowledge. For example, we all sit here looking at tiny pieces of plastic with lights shining out of it, with tiny little people running around it. 200 years ago, we'd have all been done for witchcraft, because you've got this magic box that's got people stuck in it, you know, and that would have been the science. Science is about discovery and understanding, but it has become the new religion. It's the I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where religion went wrong. Science, unfortunately, is starting to behave like the thing that it claims not to be.
Yes.
My personal view, and I'm sure you've heard this many times before. I know many people in Littleport have, and I know that you probably have too. Science and religion are like unto the shoes upon your feet. You can travel further and easier with both than you can just one. Science is reason, and faith is what gives us hope when reason says there is none. Yes. And so, you know, if we were to build a community of science and faith, it would thrive, because it's got that openness of love and compassion and understanding that there is more to things than we understand. But we've also got that scientific journey of, well, let's find out. Yeah. You know, it's one of the reasons why I'm a spiritualist, because the first thing we do is say, let's find out. Science has the aim of proving itself wrong. It should do. But unfortunately, there are many scientists these days who don't follow that same tack, as I'm sure in Michael's dealings with the stuff he does, that he's discovered upon on that attitude that's not only, I was going to say growing, but unfortunately I feel it's thriving just as badly as it is in some religious ways of life. And I'm not excluding spiritualism from that either, by the way.
No.
You know, every time a human being is able to get involved with something, it has the potential to go wrong.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Be it one of my meals that I cook downstairs, to people starting a religion, from one spectrum to another. Whenever a human being's hand starts getting into that mix, there's a risk involved. Yes. But it doesn't mean to say we shouldn't take that risk.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Without risk, there's no opportunity, really. Because, you know, all the best opportunities are, do I want to do that? Oh, go on then. You know, but, oh, hello. You walk up. You know, there's a little Bedlington Terrier here.
Yes. In actual fact, the irony is, talking about science, one thing that I do like to do is just have a Google about stuff in case they come up. And for some reason, I Googled what happened in the 1920s. And I was going to Google what happened in the 1820s to see if there was a bit of a theme flying. Did you know that it was in the 1920s that Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin?
Woo!
Oh, here is the
tonight. They're being good tonight.
Yeah, but do you know what the irony of that statement is compared to what I just said?
Go on.
Alexander Fleming, by his own admission, was a rubbish scientist. He did not set out to do what he did, and it was an accident that caused, because he set up his experiment and sodded off. He forgot about it, and then some mould got in to the experiment, and he was about to bin it off when he noticed that the bacteria and the whatever was being attacked by this mould. So it was a mistake. He messed. It was a bad experiment that made the most important discovery of the last 100 years was an accident.
Yeah.
Now, for me, there's no accident in that.
No.
If you'll pardon the pun, for when we talk about synchronicity and serendipity. But yeah, he was smart enough to notice, to observe, to see the error, and not just bin it off instantly without looking. And that is the smarts, because he knew that he didn't always get it right. And so Miles, absolutely. And we will get those answers when people are, but there are different kind of smarts, because as I always say, knowledge and wisdom might be bedfellows, but they're not mutually exclusive.
No,
Because
no.
you don't need knowledge to be wise, and certainly having knowledge doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be wise. Likewise, wisdom does not require knowledge. So it's, when they're together, they're a great couple, but they do kind of flirt with others from time to time. They're certainly not mutually exclusive, and can have a great, the word there that I've just seen pop up, correlation between each other. And should do, but there we go. But I love that. Well, thank you, Miles. That was exceptionally good timing.
Literally, as that popped up on the screen, you talked about penicillin, and I thought, oh,
Yeah,
synchronicity. They're working
absolutely,
tonight.
absolutely. And I answer me this. This is a question for you, Tony. Because we say that pretty much every time we come together or we hold a service with others. Spirit are on fire tonight. Remind me the last time they weren't.
Yeah. It's that thing about, as spiritualists, Jean always says it. She's been in this way of life now for years and years. 20 odd, 30 odd years, probably more. And she still wants one thing from her brother who's in spirit. She wants one thing. Even though she knows what she knows, she wants that one piece of information to come through. And it's the same with us. It's those little moments of, yes, there's the proof. There it is. Like when I was in Bridlington Church, Jamros, and I said, why don't we do it different? Why don't we do it the way Nick does it? Because, Nick does the address first, and then so we switched the philosophy around, and everything. My philosophy, the reading that Sally had chosen, that even Jill, who was chairing for me, didn't know what the reading was going to be, and the following hymn were all about. Well, the hymn was "You Raised Me Up." I can't remember what the reading was, but it was about people around you to help you, support you, and lift you.
Yeah.
And my philosophy was, it was about the wonder of friendship and how your blood family might not be your logical family.
Yeah.
And it all just, and Jill was sat there, jaw on table, and she's like, this is how we're going to run our services from now on, because that was amazing.
Yeah, and it's quite funny, really, because I've gotten into the habit, as the reading starts being read on a Thursday, of looking round at certain faces who've been coming a while and get really excited at that synchronicity. And I can always tell whether it's had a big impact or not, because those certain faces are looking at me and going, and it's that joy. It's that joy, and there is their evidence, before the service has even proper got off to a start that most people would perceive it. The minute we all walk into that room, the minute the door is unlocked, the minute we pull up in our cars out the front, that's when the service starts. When there's a hello and a hug at the doorway, or oh, that's a bit heavy, do you want me to carry that? Or, I've got to go and park the car around the back, can I chuck the keys at you if you want to open it? That's when the service begins. And it's ironic that we have to remind people that our job is service, when that's what we call our meetings.
Hello, it is.
It's absolutely a bit blooming obvious, but we says on the tin. Gonna say it literally is what it says on the tin. But that is life, and in the world in which we are living right now, in particular, the need for service, the need for sympathy, the need for love and compassion and understanding is even more so than ever before. And it doesn't matter, what your views are. If it follows love and compassion and kindness, it's relevant. If it doesn't, question it. And I find it quite ironic that there are certain quarters in this way of life, and I mean being alive, not spiritualism, this whole course of this journey of life, that can take the simplest of truths and turn it completely on its head to justify atrocity. Because that is, as much as love and compassion and understanding is the whole point and definition of humanity, one thing we are very good, we might be very good at building communities, but we're exceptionally good at knocking them down as well, and twisting truths to meet our own ends. I've slipped into a cross between atheist and deconstruction TikTok in my journey on TikTok, and I love the deconstructionists, and I get on really, really well with the atheists, because quite often they talk a lot of sense. My only problem is that a percentage, and I'm not including all of them in it because it would be untrue, but there is a percentage who are only atheists because they disagree with a certain religion. And there are people who think religion is bad because of their experiences with just one religion. My statement is, go out there and try another one, because they're all talking to the same being at the end of the day. It's just a different way of communicating with that particular aspect and that entity. And for me, the importance is you cannot manipulate the truth to suit your own ends. No. At the end of the day. If I may, that did kind of tie in nicely. I'm reminded that I was going to tell you my parable of my parable of the deep-rooted tree. And don't think for a second, because this actually did happen. This, I call it my parable, but it is actually a real, genuine conversation that did happen. And it isn't that the moral behind it is not just about opening other people's eyes. It challenged my own preconception and ignorance. Because the sting in the tail was actually a sting not just of hope, but also a sting at me to not be such closed-minded. And I believe that you are muted, Tony, so I'm just going to crack on. I don't know whether it's an accident or not, but whatever. I'll just keep talking because I can. Oh, there you are. So I thought I'd lost you. So that the parable of the deep-rooted tree goes as thus. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was getting ready to go to church, so I was in my dog collar, and there was a knock at the door. It was about 4:00, so I was getting ready for tea. And the door opened, and there were two ladies stood at the door to talk to me. And as I opened the door, they literally started with, "We'd like to talk to you about God." And as they saw my uniform, they gasped. And I just simply jokingly said, "Yeah, what do you want to know?" And they laughed, and we saw the funny side, and we had a bit of a giggle about it. And then the inevitable question came up of what denomination are you, Reverend? And I said, well, I'm a Christian spiritualist. Instantly, one of them took a step back and nearly screamed. The other one just stood and observed. And I was really quite drawn by that lovely lady. She was just observing. And so anyway, this other one really had a right old pop at me. And I said, look, at the end of the day, the Great Spirit, God, let's pretend for a second that God is a tree. And I said, so let's pretend that God is a tree, and we'll go into a forest and find that one particular tree. And she said, God is not a tree. And I said, well, this is actually a parable. I know you know what that means, so just bear with me. It's an example. So I said, you go out into that forest and you find that one particular tree in the middle of the forest, and you have many people who speak many different languages in front of it, and you ask each one of them to name it. Now, normally when I get to this point in the story, I can never remember the words in foreign languages to describe a tree. However, because I made me TikTok about it, I can say Arbra, I can say boom. Believe it or not, I can actually say cox, because that is a word for tree too. And there's some in symbol language that I still haven't quite, because there's several there's Cyrillic, there's Hebrew, and there's also, I included Arabic too. So I used about 20 different words, but I've been able to actually name some now. And I said, so they've all given it a different name, but it's still what it is. It's still a tree. And all of those words mean tree. And she just completely went off the rails and threw her teddies out the pram and ran away, saying that I was trying to perform witchcraft and turn God into a tree. It was just ridiculous. Oh. So I was a little bit annoyed, and I had forgotten. Nick's ignorant mistake number one. I'd forgotten the other lady, and she just stood there and beamed at me. And I went, oh, are you okay? And she went, thank you. And she looked over her shoulder and she said, looks like some roots run far too deep. And gave me a wink and a smile, and strolled off after this lady, who was now meeting up with the other half a dozen or so, that was so like, I think getting ready to send, holy water through my letterbox or something. Yeah. But it was a lovely way of not only explaining that the whole world owns God and that everyone has different names for it, just as we discussed at the beginning, but also a reminder to me that just because one person is part of an organisation that is historically and even in that present moment having a pop at me, doesn't mean to say that they all do not understand similar things to what I understand. So it was as much a smack on my wrist as it was an educational device for describing how people can perceive God through their own relationship, because just like a jigsaw puzzle, there are some pieces that we do fit well with, there are others that we don't fit well with, but they still part of the picture, and we must remember that.
Yes, yes, because if you've got the wrong pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, yeah. But we've done a wonderful loop again. We're back to where we were starting from, which is wonderful. Wonderful. Deborah, no, there was no mediumship tonight in that sense of the word mediumship, but it like Nick said at the beginning, it's all part of mediumship, and these philosophical discussions are equally important in spiritualism, in faith, as it's connecting with spirit to deliver messages in the tradition.
Absolutely, and in even more of a loop-de-loop style, Susan Symes, absolutely, it is faith at the end of the day. We've talked about science, we've talked about proof, we've talked about God, and one of the things that I really don't like is this: if God exists, prove it. Well, you ask the question, so you prove that God doesn't exist, and that's what faith is for crying out loud.
Faith.
Faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't have to reach out and touch God to know that God exists.
Yeah.
Because I have faith that God exists.
Yeah. And that is so. I don't like that argument on either side of the coin. which is why I tend to get on with a lot of atheists, because I get really, really, shirty about that statement, and I get involved in that conversation, and I can see them getting ready to hit the block button as soon as my name and picture pops up, and then I come out with something just so completely outlandish, and they're like, "Are you?" I actually had that conversation on a live once. Are you really a minister, or are you just been to the fancy dress to wind people up? No, I'm a minister, but I am confident and comfortable enough with my own faith, there's that word again, to have other people challenge it, because I challenge it myself every day. Everybody should. I challenge the people who tell me things. I challenge the things that, I tell to people. I challenge spirit to just, throw down the gauntlet and give me something else to do. And, we faith is about being tested every day.
Himself was tested in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights.
Yes. In actual fact, he actually asked, if I'm reminded my favourite part of Scripture, he actually asked for that test to be passed from him at the last moment. He very nearly flunked out on the test because he said, I can't do this, let the cup pass. Really? Come on, Dad, let somebody else deal with it. But he stayed. He could have easily walked away.
Of course.
And when I hear the word shibboleth, that moment was his shibboleth, and for me, it's the defining moment of what Christianity is. You can keep your Christmas and your Easter. For me, the defining point of Christianity is the Garden of Gethsemane, where he said, "Let the cup pass." At that point, he could have walked away. He could have prolonged the inevitable. He could have, gone on for another year, wandering further and further and further. But he made a conscious choice to stay.
And then, I was in Jesus Christ Superstar at school, and the song Gethsemane moves me every time, and especially the last bit where Christ sings, "Just come on, take me now before I change my mind." So he challenges God at the end and says, "Come on, if you're gonna do it, let's do it now, because I'm going to change my mind if not." And it's just that's the thing for me, that he did that knowing what was coming.
And it's that absolute test of faith. And I think people misunderstand the phrase "I am the way, the truth, and the light." It's that test. It's that absolute test. Now, what have we got here?
Oh, Suzanne, perfect, absolutely perfect. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, you're right. See, this is why they're the most important part of this conversation, because they remind us of everything that come through. At the moment, Lisa is going through what must feel like the most horrific tests of her faith, and you just got to know that every time you open your eyes and take a breath on a morning, it's a brand new start, and it's a brand new challenge, and in actual fact,
I love the way you've just looped everything back and said,
and in actual fact,
Lisa looks back at this and watch the rest of it, because I know she had to leave earlier on.
I hope she does, because because of what Susan said, I'm reminded earlier. I told you that I told a parable that I made up from Spirit, obviously. Tying that all in with what Evelyn has said. That fragility of faith is the perfect image, and it ties in with this piece of advice I gave to someone last night, interestingly enough. That fragility of faith. You've got someone who he goes out and spends his last £100 on a vase. Don't ask me why, because I never got that deep into it. But he goes out and he buys his last £100 he spends on buying this vase, and he gets home and he drops it, and he sits there and he's broken, just like the vase. It's in pieces, and a friend stands there and says, "Give me the pieces." And he goes, "What do you mean?" He says, "I'll make it better than ever." So anyway, the next day he comes back. The vase is in one piece, but the guy has made it obvious where all the cracks are.
Yeah.
You can see every single piece that was broken, every single piece that was cracked, and from a distance it just looked like it was just all lumped together, higgledy-piggledy. And as he got closer, he began to see it shining, and it had this beautiful lustre. And what the guy had done had taken 24 karat gold to use to seam all of the pieces back together. And so all of the cracks were embellished. The cracks were obvious, but the cracks had been made beautiful. And of course, the value of that vase went from £100 to £500. Not just because of the fact that there was gold in it, but because it was, when you looked at it and took it for what it was, in spite of its troubles and tribulations, in spite of its damage, someone had come along and picked it up and healed it and made it brighter and bolder, and reminded it that all of those cracks and those things that they thought were pain and damage can look beautiful if filled with a golden light. And that is what life is for us. We are all broken vases, and to each other we should just inject a little bit of 24 karat into our breakages, like scars.
Yeah.
Absolutely like scars, because our scars, our cracks, our breaks, if we just let a little bit of light into them and make them obvious, they will still look beautiful, because it gave it personality and character. And so that was the story I told last night. And with Lisa's situation, with Evelyn's comment, with Susan's comments, it just reminded me that I mentioned it, and I thought, there was a reason for that.
And
so
absolutely,
there we are.
I think it's a beautiful way of wrapping this evening up with a big bow, just to say that's what we are. As people of faith, I'll say it that way, it is our job to shine out that golden light when people are at the most broken.
Yeah.
To just help heal them a little bit. And I think that's a wonderful way to end tonight's service, talk, to just
chit-chat.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you for having me back.
For spending this time with us.
And I think it's the first time I've ever been invited back not to apologise for the last time.
No, I don't think there's anything to apologise for. Because we all just speak the truth.
Absolutely.
Speak the truth and shame the devil.
Absolutely. It was meant to be. Imperfections make perfections. Absolutely.
Absolutely, Miles. They do. And good luck with, I saw your comment earlier, Miles, about starting a new chapter in your life as well. So we wish you well with that. Thank you, everybody, for spending time with us. Thank you to everybody who is not watching this on Friday evening, on the 14th of October. If you're watching it sometime in the future or the past, we don't know how time's going to work. Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
Yes, let us not forget that soon Jodie Whittaker, bless her cottons, will be passing on the mantle to yet another name.
She will.
I am a sci-fi geek at the end of the day.
Ncuti Gatwa, I can't wait.
Yeah.
But thank you. if we could just blend together for a moment and we'll just close in prayer. Great Spirit, Father, Mother God, thank you for this opportunity of gathering together as friends tonight. I ask that any energy we have created go out around the world to those who are sick, suffering, and in need of comfort, to those who are taking their transition to journey home. May there be love and light to guide them, and may there be comfort and support for those who grieve. Father, I now hand back to you all which is rightfully yours, with love, honour, and glory. Amen.
Amen.
Well, God bless you, everybody. Thank you, Claire. Claire
Yes.
said, thank you. It was just what you needed tonight.
And thank you all for being a part of it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And may God bless you and keep you safe till we meet again. Good night and God bless.